Welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, here bringing you innovative conversations from the front lines of entrepreneurship. And why do I do that? Well, because in this age of disruption, nothing is going back to normal. Everything's up for review to become new. And I have the pleasure and the privilege of having these conversations with awesome people in my business of doing business, connecting with amazing people up to awesome things. So I am really excited to introduce you today to Mr. Mike Brenner. Welcome to Rise and Shine.
Thank you, Alissa. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Anytime. I mean, we connected really hardcore on music and how that influences and like infuses our entire life.
That's right.
So I'm really jazzed to have you here.
Hey, I like what you did there.
So when we met, I heard you talking about right chord leadership, which is your business. Yes?
That's right. Yes.
And
right.
It's about using what you've learned as a musician and how that infiltrates and informs leadership. So can you just speak a little bit to that? Because I mean, it's what drew me to you. So I'd like for everybody else to kind of get a peek.
Sure. So I'll keep it short because that can be a long tale, and I know we don't have all day. I've been playing music since I was a kid. I think third or fourth grade, when in my elementary school back in the day, is when they give the kids an option to learn an instrument. And my first instrument was the clarinet. I grew up in a classical music household, Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, you name it. And I just like the rich kind of woody sound of the clarinet. So I said, I'll play the clarinet. Got pretty good on the clarinet over the next few years, mostly playing classical repertoire and, middle school band repertoire. And then I was introduced by my music teacher to jazz, and I remember the exact recording he put on. It was a Miles Davis record, and of course it was something I'd never heard before. I didn't listen to jazz growing up. It wasn't something I was familiar with, and that was what they call, one of those aha moments. And I was just so intrigued by the idea that these musicians were largely making this music up on the spot, really counter to the classical paradigm, which is where you read off of a piece of sheet music, right? So I remember saying, are they just kind of playing this, without sheet music? How do they do that? And I was just,
Wait a minute.
Totally different paradigm. And so the clarinet went away, and I picked up the saxophone because I wanted to play in the jazz band, and they didn't have any clarinets in the jazz band. So the next closest relative was the saxophone. And I started taking jazz lessons for years, learning the jazz language, and haven't put it away since. So whatever it's been, 40 plus years later, something like that. I still play regularly, play in two bands, one band for almost 30 years and the other band for more than 10. But it wasn't until in 2014 or so where I started to consider blending the two worlds of organizational behavior, leadership, teams, culture with music. And I realized that there's so many lessons that one can glean from the world of music and apply to the world of organizations. And I like to say, like, the ultimate team is a jazz band, because, and we can maybe get into the details, but there's a lot of overlap. And then the kind of the branding, the right chord branding came from that, from the phrase strike the right chord. And I realized you can strike the right chord in a musical context, and you can strike the right chord in an organizational context. And from there, it just all kind of flowed.
I mean, isn't it apropos, like you hear the phrase, how you do anything is how you do everything?
Sure.
And so you hear about like athletes who then become successful entrepreneurs, and you hear now about this revolutionary idea that being a musician can actually inform how you show up in this world and how you can bring people together because of this abstract artist brain that you have. For me personally, I needed to keep singing in my life. When I rejoined the chorus as an adult, it was like I had been holding my breath for 20 years since I had graduated high school. I didn't know that I was missing it so much until, oh my God, it came back. And now it's non-negotiable. Now, if anybody asks me if I have plans or if I can make plans on a Monday night, the answer is no. Because it gives me back that flow, like creativity for creativity's sake, and
Sure.
just being able to blend and mix with a group of people. I think it actually does inform me as I go through my business cycles and through my connection and community stuff. So I see resonance here. And so, we got on in the green room and we started our conversation with music because, again,
That's
it's
right.
like a shared passion. But I think this is how people really do wind up doing business together, is they find that shared resonance, or they find that common ground where they can see each other in a symbiotic way, so
Sure.
that they can then take that relationship or that teamwork to the next level. How have you seen that in your work and in your personal life? Does it cross over for you?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, back from the Stone Age, we were looking for people with commonalities that we would join together and create little clans and communities with. And then if somebody was unlike us, they were the enemy, right? So that's kind of built into our DNA. I guess if you think of music as the universal language, which is a bit of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. I think it's true. You could go to any country in the world and not be able to speak their actual language, but every culture in the world you can um, bond over music. So music is the key. Music is the tool that I use to open the door to learning not only about oneself and one's role on a team or one's role in an organization, but also the organization at large, particularly jazz. So while I'm very familiar with other types of musical genres, rock and roll, classical, of course, it's really the jazz piece that I think, for me at least, has the greatest um, power because of the unique nature of jazz. It has the greatest power to move people and get them to see and think differently. And if you even look at jazz, even from a surface level, the parallels start to emerge, and you're like, oh yeah, just the way that jazz music is performed and created in community with other jazz musicians, but then of course the soloist has to play in a way that aligns with with what's going on around him or her. That's really, I think, a unique characteristic of jazz, and that's what I leverage in my work. And I think that's true in organizations as well. How do you sort of mitigate the individual work and the community work in an organization? uh, how do you sort of walk the line between freedom and limitations, which is also something I explore in my work. So there's just a lot of overlap between the two worlds, which gives me a lot of fertile ground to work from.
Amen, dude. So when I hear the phrase, fertile ground, where are you looking to kind of plant those seeds for people to lean into how music can infuse life and or
Right.
business?
I think um, the it's not a technique. It's a framework. It's a model. I actually call it a model. It's called the chords model. So I proceed on the assumption that I'm not talking to a bunch of musicians, right, in the room.
Right.
Normally there's one or two, but largely they're not musicians. So how do I connect the dots between something that people are not familiar with, i.e. music, and something that people are very familiar with, i.e. working in an organization? The way that I sort of bridge that gap is with something I created called the chords model. Uh, the letters in the word chords represent 6 notes, if you will. Notes in the chord. The C stands for communication, the H stands for harmony, the O is ownership, the R is respect, the D is direction, and the S is support. So everybody understands what those things mean. And the way the model works is if you're playing all 6 notes in the chords model, then you're likely to have a high performing team, high performing organization. If you're only playing 5 of those 6 notes, you have some opportunities. If you're only playing 4 of those 6 notes, you're probably seeing some dysfunction, and 3 notes or less, you're in deep trouble. So
Would you call it discord at that point?
I would call it discord. Yeah, I would. And out of that comes this idea of what chords are you playing? And I ask that of all my clients, what chords are you playing? I think that success in life and success in at work is largely a reflection of the chords we play moment to moment. And it doesn't mean we have to play perfect chords all the time, but it does mean if we play some out of tune chords, see, so that's how I sort of leverage that language. If we play some out of tune chords, we need to have the presence of mind and the self-awareness to choose another chord. So I introduced this whole idea of chords and the chords model and these 6 notes. And from there, we're off and running. Once I've sort of introduced that musical language, then sometimes I bring my saxophone to the workshop and we'll do some exercises where we're actually playing music. We're actually improvising music. And we'll talk about that experience and sort of leaning into that unknown space. So, you didn't know what I was going to play and I didn't know what you were going to play, but we went there together. What did that feel like? What did that, what lessons can you take from that and bring back to your work? So there's all kinds of tendrils and tentacles, if you will, that extend from the world of music into the world of organizations that are memorable, I think, and intriguing for folks, whether they're musicians or not.
Yeah, what I love about that is improvisation and experimentation. Like when I talk about entrepreneurship, it's a whole lot of beta testing out here.
Sure.
When you're building a business, especially a business that's new to you or something that you're looking to go to a new level in, experimentation and improvisation are key to being able to surrender what we have known, that rut of thinking that, tried and true, or not necessarily even tried, tested and true, right? Just what we've done, that
That's
rut
right.
of exactly where we've been. Sometimes we need to let that go in order to play with it a little bit. Like I find that in business in general, you get this curiosity, right? This place
Right.
where people are like, it has to be very
Sure.
serious, no laughing. Like this is there's lots laying on the line. And I think for me, when there's more on the line, the more playful you can be, the better the outcomes become, because that isn't prescripted. You're actually playing with and stepping into the expansion, which is
Sure.
largely unscripted, right? For
Yes.
me, dealing with that experimentation has been my evolution through entrepreneurship, from a mom and pop business behind a retail counter when I was 14, right?
Sure.
All the way through up till now, where I'm a real estate investor and a business coach, helping people to workshop those things together. What does it mean to be a real estate investor if you don't have business acumen? What does it
Sure.
mean to just be in business and not really understand who you're talking to? There's a whole lot of experimentation that people are looking for models and training. And here's how to, when each individual building that thing actually needs to experiment a little bit with what they're drawn to, what makes them unique. Because I
Sure.
think, and especially when you're dealing with a team, to lean into how to play together and how to expand and explore together.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I have a program called the 4 Pillars of Innovation, and the pillars are audacity, right? So being bold and audacious in your thinking, curiosity, of course, self-explanatory, simplicity, and the last one is spontaneity. So in this, little program that I developed, one of the key pillars of innovation, as you so beautifully articulated, Alissa, is spontaneity. And I think in the yin yang relationship of freedom and limitation that you find at work, you find in life, it's a constant. I don't want to call it a battle. It's not a battle. It's a relationship. It's a fluid relationship that I think is captured by that famous yin yang symbol. We tend to lean way more heavily on the limitation side. Sometimes necessarily, right? If you work at a bank or, there's certain rules and regulations and protocols or, you have to follow. So that's the limitation or the constraint side of the equation. But it's usually way, in favor of that 98% to 2% freedom. I mean, you can really constrain and limit yourself through rules, regulations, and protocols and procedures and systems to the point where people's imaginations and creativity are stifled. One of my key messages, not only in that workshop, but in my work in general, is to try to get more of a, if not a 50-50 balance between those two factors, at least maybe 60-40. And I do that through brainstorming, activities. And I give people, I call it the great hot dog dilemma. And
What? Wait a minute.
yeah,
Pause. Hot dog dilemma. I'm listening. Go ahead.
are you in? Yes.
I'm in.
So in 30 seconds, the great hot dog dilemma is based on an article I read in USA Today, about 20 years ago, where pediatricians were calling for warning labels on hot dogs because they pose very serious choking hazards for kids. And the article went through all the number of emergency room visits that result every year, specifically from hot dogs. And at the end of the article, one of the pediatricians says, someday some brilliant food engineer is going to create a totally new hot dog where the risk of choking has been sort of designed out of the hot dog. From that, I was like, that would make a really cool exercise. And so I give people in the room that challenge. Design as many different types of hot dogs as you can where the choking hazard has been is no longer an issue. But I don't want you to just write it out. I want you to draw them. So I give them a big piece of flip chart paper and some markers, and I give them, maybe 10 to 15 minutes to just unleash their imagination. How many different ways can you redesign a hot dog so that it no longer poses a choking hazard? So you get, flat hot dogs and hot dogs with a hole designed in the middle of them like lifesavers. You get hot dog smoothies. You get hot dogs you get all kinds of disgusting variations.
Great.
But the point is, you are thinking outside of a familiar paradigm, i.e., the choke hazard hot dog, and you are literally thinking about how the shape can be different, how the texture can be different, how the way it's consumed can be different. And that is the lesson, how can you apply that to the stuff you do at work? I'm not telling you to throw out everything that's working, but I am challenging you to think beyond what's already working. What can you take that's already working and build on it, enhance it, amplify it, so that you can bring added value to your client base? So yes, bringing more spontaneity, more improvisation, more creativity, more innovative thinking. I think that's honestly, I think that's one of the greatest opportunities that most organizations face today. Too much limitation, not enough imagination.
And in any transition, this happens naturally. I mean, I'm looking here before we started recording. You're like, what's this? The wall of pictures you got here. And in our
That's right.
transition to move house, so many things had to be reimagined. I knew that this was going to be my office space, but I was very reticent to fill it up with things because I wasn't sure, because it wasn't exactly my office space that I had had in our previous home. And
Yes.
working from home, it's like I want it to feel like home still, but it needs to be a space where I can, close door and concentrate. So
Sure.
my daughter grabbed these pictures and filled my wall. And you know what? This is the magnet that made this my office. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to be in here. This has pictures
Sure.
of my sister, my cousin, my grandma, my father is here somewhere, So, you know, we took a 4-generation trip to Disney, me, my sister, my daughter, my grandma, and my mom. So, I mean, like, these are some really great memories of some really amazing people that make my life meaningful. And so it reminds me when I'm in this space that this is what drives the reason why I'm here. So
That's right.
I thought I needed to have my desk, my computer, my file system. All I needed was pictures and people in order to build out the space.
That's right. And I think there's even a greater lesson there with our obsession, fixation on all things artificial, right? i.e., artificial intelligence and robots and technology, and all of that is really cool. I'm not saying it's not,
Yes.
but look what you just shared with me. That's not where you're getting your energy from. You're getting it from photos of what? People who are meaningful to you.
Yep.
And so I think there's a huge opportunity. We're talking about opportunities. I think there's also an opportunity for organizations to reconnect to that very simple premise that despite all the technology and all the AI and all that um, foretells, positive and negative, it really comes down to people. I mean, my office here is literally surrounded by pictures of, musicians who inspire me. I mean, I know it's hard to see, but I just have posters and photographs.
Hey,
Not
just
so
move
much.
your chair a little bit. I saw a piano back there.
Yeah, there is a piano back there because a few years ago, there it is.
Ta-da!
There it is. I thought maybe I never learned piano, and I wish I had. So as an adult, I tried to learn piano, and I was doing pretty well until the music got a little bit more complicated. Then I said, it's too hard. But maybe someday I'll go back to it. But my point is, whether it's your space or my space, and I do talk about space in my work, how many of us have the luxury of being able to work in a space that is um, energizing and makes us feel good? I mean, I've heard of a lot of instances where people have been told to take that stuff down, and I'm just like, oh, that's so counterintuitive. Why would you want people to take down the stuff that makes them feel good? So I look around me and I'm surrounded by the legends of the music that I love and that fuels me. And just being in their presence, metaphorically speaking,
Mhm.
I find very comforting, and I derive creative energy from that, much like you do from your photos. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that is the unspoken or the shoved under the rug thing in most businesses is that people have to feel good and feel connected to each other and to what they're up to and
absolutely.
why they're doing it in order to create productivity. So we have a big library of things in the business world that says productivity is having a great strategy, making sure you're implementing on a consistent basis and measuring that implementation and tweaking your strategy, right? It gets kind of caught in this vicious cycle of the strata, the structure, the mechanics, and
Right.
it leaves a large world unspoken, unseen, unaddressed of why any of that matters to begin with.
You're exactly right.
And that's
Yeah. uh,
truly what I feel like the world needs now in this age of disruption, especially as we move forward in the place where, you can be by yourself all day and feel connected through a computer, but if you're not having meaningful interactions,
Sure.
your life, we just did an episode a few times ago that said, bring yourself out of isolation. Like
That's
right
right.
now, the world needs more connection than it ever has before. And that is the unspoken thing is like, that's what makes the world tick.
Yes, and that's exactly right. And on the heels of our conversation about AI and technology, that's great. I think there's a lot that could potentially benefit man and womankind from all that. And there's a couple things that have me concerned. That's for another day. But especially, COVID was extremely traumatic. It had quite a psychological toll on us as individuals and as a society and as just a global society. And so kind of coming out of that, it was almost like emerging from a dark room into the bright sunlight. It was kind of like, now what? We had to kind of find our way back, reconnect to those things that we had been doing pre-COVID that just seemed so super, very, very natural to us, very, very organic to us, because a lot of that stuff went away. When you can't be in the same room with another human being for years, that's gonna change things. And I think the key there that you said is meaning and purpose. Um, in my research on Gen Z, I gave a workshop in the spring about what was it, seven facts and three myths you need to know about Gen Z. one of the facts about Gen Z is they're all in on the meaning and purpose thing. Not saying that other generations aren't, but they're all about it. And even in some cases beyond just the salary, they will go to a workplace where they find meaning and purpose in their work, even if they're making less than somewhere else where they're not into it. You know, they're just not down with the mission of the company. And so I think that a return to meaning is critical. And I think that's something that leaders can really lean into. It can't just be time to make the donuts, time to make the donuts, time to make the donuts. If I can show my age by referring to an ancient Dunkin' Donuts commercial, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be
Listen,
more.
in my family, it was time to make the bagels, but
There
okay.
you go. I don't care if it's bagels or donuts. It
Yeah,
can't just be transactional.
right.
There needs to be, people need to, like you said, they need to feel invested in the work. They need to feel that their work is contributing to something important, and they need to feel that they're part of something that matters. And that's where I would start with organizations. You know, if I did a survey of your people and asked them, what do you do every day? Oh, you know, I don't want the mechanical. I want to hear the meaning. Does it resonate for you? Does it fill you with joy to come into work and do what you do? And I bet, you know, 95% of people go, nah, it's just a job. What an incredible opportunity that is, right? For organizations to try to amplify meaning at work. So that's another, you know, and that's the D in the chords model, direction. When you have a bold, dare I say, audacious vision for your company, and you get people excited about it, and you get people sort of rowing in the same direction and investing all that energy toward that audacious goal, you can accomplish anything. I mean, isn't that the story of successful companies? Everybody was in. They rolled up their sleeves and they saw what could be accomplished together and they went after it. But unfortunately, I don't see that. I see a lot of, just kind of show up to work and get
And
by my day and go on to the next day. And I think that's unfortunate.
and you know what? But what you said about that is, it's just a job. You said, and what a wonderful opportunity that is, right? So
That's right.
one of the greatest mentors that I've had is Jack Canfield, and he talks
Oh, sure.
about, I wonder what the opportunity that this is.
That's
If
right.
we are 98% heavy in the metrics and the structure and needing the opportunity to expand in the being side of business and the relational side of stuff, you know, I wonder what the opportunity is, because when you hear people say, well, the problem is, and the problem is, and they
Yes.
go down about describing what the problem is, this is natural human behavior. This is
Sure.
natural progression of our amygdala saying, well, what's the anomaly? What's the problem? So we can figure out, so we can stay
That's right.
safe.
Because it's causing me pain, right?
Yeah. And if
Physical,
we can,
psychic. Yeah.
yeah, and if we can take that problem language and just layer it with an awareness that when you say what the problem is, that is an opportunity, and just look for the ways that it is an opportunity to change. So they say, or Jack says, or someone he knows that he taught me says, you know,
Right.
the awareness of a problem comes with the seed of the solution in it. So
Mm.
if you're aware of a problem, it means that you are uniquely qualified to also work on solving it.
Yeah, and I think didn't Einstein say something similar, like the a problem cannot be solved at the same level of self-awareness that created it, or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, a lot of people get mired. Well, to extend that thinking a little, Alyssa, when there's a problem, not only do people talk a lot about the problem, but they also talk a lot about who's to blame for the problem. And in some cases, that's warranted, especially if it's a big, egregious mistake or failure. I mean, sometimes it's worthwhile to find out who's to blame. But I think the greater opportunity is to get out of the blame game and acknowledge that there's an issue, acknowledge there's a challenge before us, and start moving the energy from who's to blame, who dropped the ball, who screwed up, to what now.
Yep.
right? And if you can marshal people's energy in that direction rather than staying mired in the blame game, all kinds of cool things can happen. Not only can you solve the problem a lot faster, but you can land on a solution that was perhaps even better than the one that you might have discovered had you not gone through that process or had you not adopted that orientation. And I think, to come full circle to the jazz metaphor, jazz is all about entering into an unknown space together. Because as a soloist, I'm not really sure what I'm about to play. And you, as the rest of the band, is not really sure what I'm about to play, but we have trust in one another that we're going to go there together and it's going to be really cool.
Right
And
on.
you're going to support me and I'm going to support you. And I think to extend that metaphor to problem solving in organizations, it's more important to have that trust in one another and to be willing to enter into that creative space and ask, how might we? Or how can we? Or, we can't turn back the clock and prevent that problem. But now that it's before us, what can we do about it together? Rather than, stay mired in the other stuff, which I think is largely counterproductive. So again, drawing from the world of jazz, I think that really gives us a lot of things to think about that are very germane to organizations. And I do a whole thing about mistakes and failures and how mistakes in jazz are not really mistakes; they're opportunities. Miles Davis said, "When you play a wrong note, it's the next note that makes it good or bad." Right? So, okay, you played a wrong note. You played a wrong note. What are you gonna do? Right? It's
Yeah.
you did it. So what you play next can make that wrong note sound right or not. So you played a wrong note at work. Okay, right? As long as it didn't bankrupt the company, you have an opportunity. The question is, what do you do next? How do you turn that wrong note and make it right? Well, the way you make it right is by learning from it, by getting better now than you were the day before, by
Mhm.
finding new ways of serving your clients that were even better than what you had been doing. So yes, the key word I think is opportunity, and that's something I really lean into in my work. But unfortunately I don't find that mentality a lot with a lot of organizations. It's
Yeah.
more the other. Yeah,
And
it's more
that is
the
that
blame.
is the opportunity, right? When you can describe the problem, you have the seed of the solution right there. And I loved what you said about what next, taking that
Yeah,
inflection point of where corporations or executives are trained right now. I have a client who has entered the real estate space and wanted to learn the ins and outs of the business of creating a real estate investment business, but she was a C-suite corporate finance executive. So learning for her to embrace that exploration and be able to withstand saying, oh, okay, that was a mistake, let's move on. It's so ingrained to like, let's hide the mistakes, let's not address them.
oh my
And
gosh,
that is
yes.
what's the problem in the corporate culture. And when you're tipping into entrepreneurship, that is the very thing, the very first thing that you do embrace is like, I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff. I'm going to win a bunch of stuff or learn it because I'm making mistakes. Like what we create as mistakes are learnings that we now own. It's not the industrial educational way of looking at learning. It's not read this, repeat this, now you know it. It's more about explore this, experiment, win some, learn some, move forward into what's next. And so that's the opportunity that I'm bringing to people as they step into their role of having a passive income real estate business, into
Sure.
being an entrepreneur and learning to experiment, that is the foundation for growth, expansion, and developing what comes next. You don't have to be right all the time. You just have to keep moving. So I
Yeah.
want to just
A
wonderfully,
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
I think the fear of mistakes is fatal to an entrepreneur and potentially fatal to a more established organization that is so fearful of, I don't know what, that you just it's just there's no experimentation, there's no exploration, there's a fear of making mistakes that is part of the culture there. And then you might as well just have a workforce of robots. just cranking out the work. But if you're going to employ human beings, you have to, in my view, cultivate a culture where failure and mistakes are part of the process of getting better. And if people are fearful of making mistakes or falling short, they're going to feel so constricted in their thinking. And it's just you're going to, I mean, you're just going to lose. You're going to have more experimental entrepreneurial competitors who are continually coming up with really cool things, and you're gonna get left behind. So I don't think it's a nice thing to do. I think it's absolutely essential.
Yep.
You don't have to be Apple, you don't have to be uh, you know, Tesla or SpaceX, but you do need to make some room and some space to try different things, take some calculated risks, recognize that sometimes you're not going to hit the mark on the first try, and know that that is all part of the innovation process. And
Yep.
it is a hallmark of the most successful organizations in history.
And you know what? In the age of disruption, the innovators win the day. So if
Sure.
you've taken anything from this conversation, I invite you to rewatch this, take a whole bunch of notes, because this was one of the most amazing conversations of how to become what you are going to be up to next. Whether you're an executive and you're in corporate, or you're on your way to entrepreneurship, or somewhere in between these two worlds, innovation is the recipe and the necessity for where we're going as a individual, as a business, as a corporation, as a society. So Mike, thank you so much for being here for this
My pleasure,
amazingly,
Alyssa. It was awesome.
uh, like,
Yeah, we could go
yay.
another hour.
I
I
know,
know.
we will, and trust me, you'll be back. So if I have anything to say about it, right? Mike, where can people go to find you if they've resonated with your harmonious
Oh,
information?
I love
Where
it.
can they go?
Yeah. Awesome. Wonderful use of the right chord language there. I would love to connect with anyone who is so moved to connect on LinkedIn. Um, my LinkedIn profile is whatever the first part of that is, right? It's www dot whatever LinkedIn. And my name is Michael Y. Brenner, because my middle name starts with Y. And there's some other Michael Brenners out there. So Michael Y. Brenner, look for the guy who's in the description is the musician and the saxophone player. You can also find out more about Right Chord Leadership at my website, which is Right Chord Leadership, chord with an H, Right Chord, CHORD leadership.com. And I guess those would be the two primary places to learn more, and would be more than happy to talk to folks who have been moved by this discussion, and maybe some of this stuff resonated for them in terms of an issue or a challenge they might be having at work. I'd be delighted to, just jump on a Zoom and at no cost try to be of service to folks, because that's what it's all about.
Man, that is a generous offer. Take him up on this, please. So I want to thank you for being here for Rise and Shine. To be continued, my friend. We broadcast every single Monday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Be there, be square. Thanks so much. Let us know what you've loved about this conversation. Give us a thumbs up, a like, and a comment. What would you like to hear from us next? And in the meantime, rise and shine. All the potential is here for you to innovate your life and for you to bring into the world that which only you can bring. So till next time, friends, I'll see you on the same bat time and same bat channel. Adios.
Rock on, everybody.